it really is a little more flabbergasting. Let me see if I can find that. Okay, so I'm going to show you a bunch of images. This was taken from a photograph down the States. It shows some kind of a being. Now, is this, I can't say for certain that this is genuine or that it's computer-generated image, but a CGI. But the thing is that this particular light being does show up frequently. I'll show you others. Here is a picture of a being, and the image from which this was taken was quite small, and a woman who I have met who took this image was photographing the chairs that were sitting on the ground, and people had gotten up to take a break, pee break or whatever, and she felt the need to point her camera towards a certain direction, and this is the image she got. Let's see, there it is here. And so this being has a mouth, a nose, there's some eyes, possibly it's wearing glasses, very large forehead, and possibly some hair on the top. There is an arm and a leg and another arm up here, as if it's stepping out of something. And this was there just sort of very briefly, and she snapped the camera and caught this image. And so the thing about it is that what it shows is that these ETs will show up on camera. Even though the eye may not see it, the camera will. Here's another being. This was taken, I believe it was in Britain. I could be wrong about this, but it showed up in a crop circle. And this was in the middle of it. It has a very almost humanoid shape to it. These were taken by people and posted on Facebook. There seems to be entities in a light form moving around. And this could be the same thing. I don't know whether this is on the ground or up in the air. But the interesting thing about this is that you may experience seeing these types of creatures when you're out in the field, that there's flashes of light and they seem to be on the ground. This could be the ETs walking around you at the time. I say that with a bit of hesitancy, but with a certain amount of probability that this is probably what's happening. This one looks like it's probably holding something. And it's hard to tell what this one is doing, but these definitely look like they were moving. Some ETs that you may encounter are huge. They're tall. Here's a person sitting down here, and here's this tall entity with a very large head. And they estimate that this ET individual is somewhere between 10 and 12 feet in height. So you're not getting the small little ETs running around all the time. That doesn't happen. There's a diversity, there's a variety of ET that we encounter. And some of these large ones are encountered quite frequently. Again, this one, which is similar to the other one, was taken in Brazil. Here, this is a CSETI one. This one is from Mars. And it's just this light that shows off in the distance. I have other photographs that show this, and I had to enhance this and bring it out and to give you a perspective, because this is not a light beam that shoots up into the air. This is confined to a particular shape. And there is a sort of like shoulder and a kind of trunk and body and possibly a head in there somewhere. Again, it seems like wild speculation, but I show that because I want you to realize that not all ETs are going to be physical. Here again, this is another group of people on the Mount Shasta, and there are beings moving around in the background and off to the side. So there's one here, and a bunch of them here, possibly here and here. These are people all sitting around in a circle. Again, these beings are either phasing in or phasing out. In some cases, you can make out some aspects of a face, a mouth, nose, eyes, etc. You have to know what to look for. A lot of times people will post things and it's hard to understand another person's post because they're going to have a perception of what they think they're posting, and you may see something else. There's a fellow that posts a lot of Mars anomalies, and quite frankly, they look like rocks to me. I have seen those things, and he's enhanced them. And I said to this individual more than once, on one occasion, stop enhancing the photographs, because when you do that, you're altering the perception of what you're trying to get across. You're wanting people to see what you want to see, and it doesn't always work that way. This is another one. This was sent to me by my friend Justice down in Texas. I helped him get his CSETI group up and going. An individual, the name of Brian Turner, took this photograph. Here there's a bunch of people sitting around. These are like semi-trailers, and there's this large being. You can just see the shadow, and it looks like he's wearing a helmet. And so I played around with this and to bring out features. And there are features on this, that there's an eye and a mouth area, and sometimes it can be seen better in black and white. But this is not too many people have seen this photograph. This is rather unique, and I can't post it because it's by Brian Turner, and I need his permission before I can do that. This is another one. Here there are empty chairs in a circle, and two entities are above. And this is one that I played around with. It was taken in Joshua Tree in 2019. And when you look at the image, there is a place of where it is a head, some eyes, a nose, and a mouth. You know, people will say, well, how do you know that? Well, when I was in university, we had to look at photographs and we had to determine certain things from them. I'm not saying this was photographic analysis, but in one instance, you had to spot the comet in amongst a star field. And you had two photographs, and you had to basically measure the stars and then measure, hopefully, what was the comet that was traveling. And there are some people that found it. I never found it because it was it was beyond my ability. You know, you can always try and cheat and lay the photographs over one another and find out by flipping back and forth which object has moved. But when you're looking at a plate that has thousands of stars on it, that's really hard to determine. Okay, so back to this picture here. This is a set of pictures, but this was the one, this was taken in Rio Rico. Everybody saw that. I kind of missed it. I think I saw it, but this was a sort of a tetrahedral type of object moving up above us. and that was photographed. And this is the one that I was talking about, where this lady by the name of Raven took this photograph, and this is where the ET is. And here are the chairs. I don't think I could, yeah, I can't make that any larger, I don't think. Let me just see. No, okay. But anyways, so there are the chairs, and she just caught it in her photograph. Here is an object that's kind of waving and moving through. This is sort of like a light ribbon. I've had this in my backyard. I'll show you that. Again, this was taken in Florida. It wasn't in England, it's Florida. This was the object that was taken in Britain. It was like a red orb floating above, and it's being pointed out by possibly Dr. Greer in this crop field or crop circle. Okay, this, when I was being interviewed by the Discovery Channel, there was two cameras. This fella here, there was one off to the left, and the interviewer was in front of me. And this was taken by, on a video by my late friend, Brian Greer, who has since departed. But he took this, and this was all maybe about 5 seconds. It was enough to capture something. There was something in the background over his shoulder, but this, most people saw this pop up over the ridge and hover there. And this is the object. But I recognize now that there were probably two objects. One may have been there prior to this one arriving. And when we went over to investigate this later, this is where the cross-country ski chalet is, up on Cyprus. And the interesting thing is there are no lights there. These are not road lights. These are lights that appeared only in the photograph. And this is about a mile away. So that gives you a perspective, okay? Same thing here in black and white, showing the particular object that occurred and appeared. And so this was a fellow that was into
the Earth. When we have located the Earth, we will indicate which continent, which part of the continent, east or west, whether it's nighttime or morning. In this case, it will be in the evening or nighttime. So it will be in darkness. You'll see a number of lights, which will be the cities lit up on the continent. We'll indicate to them that the
Okay, so basically what that was me being interviewed, and I'm explaining a little bit about the CSETI protocols, because when we were being filmed, Dr. Joseph Burks, who came up from LA, he was one of the former teammates of Dr. Greer and the senior CSETI team. He came up and helped us to formalize our group. And so what happened was the Discovery Channel went down to LA, interviewed him, and then he said, I don't have time to take you out to show you what we do, but I know someone up in Vancouver. You may want to go and talk to him, and perhaps he can take you out. So they contacted me, and this was the interview, and I'm giving that was only just a snippet of what was there. The rest of it was on a program called Alien Week. And they actually didn't have any of my interview, but they had the team running around setting up lights and stuff, and the beeping sound and all the rest of it. So look up Alien Week for Discovery Channel. They may be somewhere on in the records of the internet.
I see two dates there, Terry. I see 201 and I see 1997. BCTV. Is that the one you mean?
No, this is a different one. I'll show this. This isn't too long.
Okay.
Let's see if I can open it.
Saturday nights mean an evening at the movies, maybe out at the clubs or out with friends.
But for one more mainline group, Saturday nights are spent doing something that is truly out of this world.
John Valley Rao explains.
We really go out here not knowing what to expect.
They are drawn to the end of a lonely road in Coquitlam. Under the cover of darkness, the faithful have come.
I'm looking for my dad's to
A rendezvous with fate.
Let's make sure we're going to the same location. Yeah.
Trekking into a dark and damp field,
It's a bit slippery here, so be careful.
they hope to enlighten the human race
Well, okay, let's just move that back further.
by preparing for the visitors who they expect tonight.
Just barely, you can barely see a cluster of galaxy way up there.
Chico is an actor.
It's very vague, actually.
Diane, single mom.
If you look-
Deborah, a child care worker at UBC.
You need a flashlight?
And Terry is an exterminator.
Each have a view of the forest.
Together, they're ambassadors of the planet.
Well, let's make our way out to landing pad number 1.
Once a month, they roll out the welcome mat,
This one over here, I should triangulate over to here.
pattern of lights and strobes.
I'll get the other ones turned on. Put one right there, Chico. Yeah. Well, what we're going to have is about 6 lights out on the circle here.
A circle to attract the saucers.
We're trying to do what is a civilian initiative, a CE5 initiative that is human initiated, that we are trying to vector in spacecraft into this area.
Spacecraft that might be looking for a place to land.
We'll go back to the chairs, and then I'm going to assign everybody a duty for tonight.
They're all members of an international group called CSETI, or the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. To entice the ETs to land, Harry uses beeps and tones that he believes are the sounds of spaceships, and broadcasts them on a walkie-talkie.
One of the things what we expect to see happen if we're successful in vectoring in a spacecraft is that the spacecraft will land, turn off its propulsion system, and we will wait for the ETs to emerge from their craft and come over and meet with us.
You don't sort of immediately run out, demand information, demand that they hand over their technology. You're meant to be an ambassador to the universe.
We wait till the system is, the propulsion system is turned off, and then we engage them in a conversation.
I would be ecstatic. I would ask for permission to journey with them.
And if the aliens were to whisk them away to outer space, the group has plans for that too.
The name's Diane Friesen.
My name is Chico Peters.
My name's Deborah Warren. If I leave planet tonight, please contact my friend Karen Schaefer for phone number
They
5.
each log their voice on a tape to be left behind.
An extraterrestrial spacecraft has probably landed, that we've met with extraterrestrial life forms, and that we've been invited on board that spacecraft. So what we're having is an onboard, off-planet experience.
All of a sudden, Chico sees something. That's when Terry and Chico move to the center of the landing pad using a flashlight as a beacon.
A few triangles, giving some idea that there is a form of intelligence down here. I don't know. I think that's a start.
You might wonder if this is a good way to spend a Saturday night.
I'm not currently dating. That's what you mean. I'm a single parent. And this interests me no end. So, yeah, this is just as good a time for me as any.
And if you think this is all a little strange,
I don't care what they think. I know from fact and from experience what I have experienced in my lifetime.
in fact, all 4 have seen things that can't be explained.
It was making like sort of an S in the sky.
But on this night, the ETs are somewhere else. We even scanned the sky with night vision, but saw nothing.
We kind of sense that maybe they might have been aware of what we're doing, but I didn't get a real strong impression.
After 3 hours, they decide to call it quits. There will be no interplanetary treks tonight, just a trip home by car. But there's always next month.
And there's a lot more to the world than the limitations we put on it.
John Benavali Rao, BTV News.
So, Bridget, do you believe?
Well, you know, it's a little hard to believe that we're here all alone, but I haven't seen anything to make me believe, so I'm sitting on the fence a
You
little bit.
gotta hang out with those folks on Saturday night.
Maybe that's what I need to do. And in fact, if you want more information about this group, there is a website you can visit, www.cseti.com.
Right, now, coming up.
Activity spot the Earth when we have located the Earth.
Okay, so that was BCTV or Vancouver Television. Bridget is a lady that I actually knew. I met her and her mother up in Merritt years ago, and it was a nice surprise to see that she had advanced her career and was in television. So sometimes it's all about the connections that you make. So anyways, the Alien Week video is about a half hour long, and I won't show that. But I do want to show you other pictures. All right, so the basic protocols, realizing that this is work and that you're going to be an ambassador from Earth to the cosmos, to be a diplomat, and that means you're going to project all the best qualities of a human being. And we're not going out into the field with guns drawn, and we're not going out there with the time to take our drinks with us, and our cigarettes and our drugs and all that stuff. Like all of that, leave that at home. We're trying to project this really intelligent, evolved image of what humans are and have the potential to be. So when we're out there, we're going to be doing a number of things. One of them is we're going to form a circle. In this particular day and age, we're going to have to use the pandemic social distancing and maybe masking, depending if we're not vaccinated. We keep our distance by 6 or 8 feet. We form a circle. And in that circle, we set up our camp chairs. We get our equipment out, whatever we need. I tell people to wear layered clothing. In the summer, light layered clothing. In the winter, heavier clothing, so that you can add or take off the clothing based on your requirements. Bug spray is important because we're sometimes out in an area where there are mosquitoes and other annoying insects in the environment. Sometimes they just disappear after a certain period of time in the night, and then we're no longer bothered with them. We are going to usually start off with meditation. Now, recently in the last few years, Dr. Greer has used a puja, a blessing for the site. I sometimes say a little prayer, blessed is the spot, etc., and it's all of about 30 seconds. And all it really is doing is you're just being thankful, and you're giving a positive vibe to what you're doing. And the ETs actually appreciate that. And, you know, if you are calling on the avatars that you know and understand or even follow, or if you are calling upon the celestial beings or the concourse on high, or calling upon the great prophets of the past, regardless of what your religion is, then you're asking for them to assist you so that your powers and perceptions are enhanced. And usually they are enhanced. Dr. Greer will say that he experiences 1,000 or 1,000,000-fold enhancement to that ability. because what you're trying to do is to get into that zone of awareness. And awareness is what you are aware of. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're aware of the bird chirping and the cricket chirping or making its noise, or the frog croaking, or whatever. You are aware, but you don't focus on that. It's just saying that is my awareness. It's aware of that.
Mm.
And so when you're in this meditative state, you're relaxed. You close your eyes, probably because it's a little easier to not be distracted by the things around you. And I usually play a recording of Dr. Greer doing a meditation. And there are many different meditations that he has done. We do that the first time, then that's done for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then the second time I'll do what I call a free meditation, that I don't play anything. I allow people to just meditate on their own for the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes. When we're meditating, what we're trying to establish is this expanse of awareness. And this awareness, we want it to encompass the area in which we're in. We want to be aware of the people within our group, but we want to expand above, around, and below our group. We're trying to anchor our awareness to a point in the middle of the earth. So wherever we are, that anchor is always in the same place, but the tip of it, which is where we are, can be moved around. So you got to think of it as a long rod, and the top of it can move wherever the location is. Now,
Okay.
when you are firmly rooted in that sense, you're going to become more and more aware of what it is that is being aware, which is yourself. Being aware of you, your person. Being aware of the others. And even visualizing the awareness as having a form of light, perhaps a golden light or orb that's spinning. And it's spinning counterclockwise. And as it spins, it moves around the circle that you are in with the other teammates. So everybody's awareness is spinning in a vortex, faster and faster, higher and higher. And the whole point behind this is to achieve an awareness that can move up and up beyond the location in which you're in. So you should be able to perceive the group sitting below, and as you move further out, you should be able to visualize and see the continent in which you're on, whereabouts on the West Coast, looking at perhaps land formations and geographical locations, and then moving beyond that, so you're outside of the Earth atmosphere, looking back at the Earth as a round orb, and perhaps further still being able to see now the moon and the Earth together, and the sun and that portion of space. So you're fully aware of where you are at, and ideally you should be able to see this with the mind's eye, not just imagining it, but actually seeing it, and expanding further beyond, say, Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and the outer planets, and moving way beyond our star system, so that now you are looking back and you're seeing the sun and a few points of light that may be the planets, and moving further out, you move through one of the arms of the Milky Way galaxy until you actually are outside of the Milky Way galaxy looking back. And that's one perception, and you should be able to see that. And if you move further and further out, you then start to travel through intergalactic space, where all of a sudden, all the galaxies that you can perceive look like points of light, like stars. Because the universe is vast, it's without end. There's no beginning, there's no end to it. It's just an infinite state of physical existence. And what we are doing then at some point, whether it's outside of the Earth, whether it is on the moon, whether we're on Mars, whether we're looking from some vantage point in the solar system or outside of our galaxy, what we're then going to try and do is to rest a moment and allow our minds to expand and fill that awareness, that consciousness of where we're at. And we're going to reach out with our mind's eye and our mind's voice, and just being aware that we want to make contact with any ET civilizations, whether they're on a planet, whether they're traveling through space, and we're going to invite them to come to the planet Earth. We may see a spacecraft, in which case we politely ask if we can come aboard and show them where we are so that they can come and visit us. So at that point, when you are suddenly aware of that ET consciousness, and it may happen, it may not, it just depends on the individual, then we do what we call coherent thought sequencing, CTS. And essentially, this is where we show them where we are. So when we have meditated and left the Earth, we're now reversing the process and showing them where we are. We're going back through the arm of the galaxy of the Milky Way, and we're going through clouds of gases, and finally we'll see our sun off in the distance. And as we move towards it, we will start to pick up on the other planets, perhaps Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Jupiter, past Mars, and the asteroid belt. We may be coming from a different direction. It could be that we are seeing the sun, Mercury, and Venus, but we're going to arrive at the third planet, Earth. And we're going to see this with its moon. And we're going to then be able to see the continent, whether it's the hemisphere, whether it's west or east, whether it's lit up or it's daytime or nighttime in the lights of the city. And we're going to focus in on the area which we came from, which is usually the 49th parallel. Vancouver Island, Bright City on the just east of that, Vancouver, and then slightly east of that is Coquitlam and the Tri-City States. And we're going to see that location in which we're at. So for instance, if we're at the Coquitlam River Park, that will be the location that we're going to show them. We're going to show them two round cement pad areas, and we're going to show them a mountainside on the east and a mountain on the west. And there is this valley in between, and that's where we're situated. We'll be able to show them even the number of people and who they are. That's coherent thought sequencing. After the meditation, which is a part of that, we then awake from that state, and we'll ask people, did they perceive anything? Did they have any subjective information that they wish to share? It could be that somebody says, I felt that I saw a craft, and they will try and describe it. Or they may say, I felt a presence. I saw an ET, or felt there was an ET. You know, I've had people who try to label what they're seeing by saying, oh yeah, they're the Yayao, and they're on this ship and they're coming towards us and blah blah blah. Well, you know, that's all fine and dandy, but be aware that not everybody perceives the same thing. So what we're doing is sharing bits and pieces of information, and collectively we'll get a picture of what's taking place. It's very rare that any but one individual will have all the answers, even if they're experienced enough. When I'm out, I don't always get a lot of information thrown at me, but then I'm not too concerned with that, because I know they're here. I know they exist. So they don't have anything to prove to me. But I do want other people to be perceptive enough to experience what I have experienced in the past. So we're sharing that information. Then sometimes in that information, there may be an element of time involved, in which case somebody may say, I got a feeling we're going to see something in this part of the sky at a roughly around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. We may want to take a look there. Somebody will then check the star maps on their phone, because I recommend that when you come out, you have not only your basic equipment, but your cell phone will be able to have other apps on it, like a star map, a satellite tracker, an airline craft tracker, a magnetometer or a compass, various things that we will find useful, because sometimes satellites come over and they could be misidentified as being a UFO when they're not, and sometimes a satellite really is a UFO. So we have to be aware of that. And what I'm going to show you now is some pictures of what you may expect to see from time to time. I've seen most of this stuff throughout my experiences. Here we have an example of alleged meteorites. And I cannot make this picture any larger, it's just the way it is. But you get meteorites coming in, usually not in mass, but zipping in one at a time, maybe two at a time, and they all seem to be congregating into a certain area. There's historical documentation for this, not just from CSETI, but from other UFO researchers, that they call these the green fireballs and what have you, depending on the color. And I've seen this. And what it is that meteorites don't travel that way. They don't go all into one area. They're zipping all over the place. And what it is that the Earth is rotating and moving through space, and it's crossing the path of these meteorites as they move through space. Together, they may look like they're coming from one direction, but as the Earth is moving, they're zipping across in different directions, unless they're intelligently controlled. The other thing that we may see is what are labeled as alleged satellites. In other words, a satellite goes over, and you can see this throughout the night. And normally, most satellites of any noteworthy is that they do move from west to east, sometimes east to west, or north to south, or south to north. So you get the cardinal points. But when they start coming in, and it looks like there's a 10-minute or 5-minute or 15-minute separation between their travel, that's highly suspicious if they're all coming from the same direction. I've seen this with the constellation Cassiopeia. And what's interesting is you see one and you say, oh, that's just a satellite. And then you look back in the same direction. There's another one coming from the same constellation. And you say, oh, well, that's a coincidence. And then you see a third one show up coming from the same direction. Then you get suspicious. And this is why having a a satellite tracker app on your phone becomes beneficial, because now somebody can check to see, is it a satellite or is it something anomalous? Okay,
Right.
if it's anomalous, you can say, okay, that's one unidentified object, because they are unidentified. Could they have been ET? Possibly. Another example is what we call starlight UFOs. And these may appear as stars, but they move slightly against the background. And so most stars take a period of time to rotate through the heavens, but these points of light seem to move a little bit differently. And sometimes they may suddenly flash at you. Well, then that's unusual, because aircraft, if they move at a relative rate, and you can see the incandescent lights on their wings and tail to let you know that that's what it is. But these things are up higher, and what happens is that their light emanations are different. So a star like a UFO should be viewed, particularly if it suddenly gets a little closer to you. And I can tell you, I've seen this down in Colorado as a UFO was coming up over the top of Mount Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And I looked at it and through binoculars, and it was huge. This thing was white, disc shaped, and I'm speculating when I say this, had to be 5 to 10 miles in size. That's huge. And I pointed this out, and somebody said, oh, that's just a star. And I said, take another look. That's not a star. That has shape to it. And I said, I just watched it move from below and move up. And then what it did was it achieved a geosynchronous orbit, so it was moving with the stars. That's what UFOs can do. They'll fool you. And in fact, I've heard of stories of UFOs looking like the Great Big Dipper, and all of a sudden they move away, and it just blows everybody's mind. You're saying, well, how can that be? That was the Big Dipper. Those lights can't move. That's because it wasn't the Big Dipper. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the things you want to see. That pretty much confirms what you're looking at. Then you get into objects that look like airplanes, and some will morph into that shape. Others just look like that. And one account was that somebody saw an airplane-like structure moving towards Mount Blanca down in Colorado, and all of a sudden he went into the mountain. And people said, well, there's got to be a door or an entrance up there. No, it materialized into solid matter. That's what transdimensionality can do. Now, interestingly enough, the Tic Tacs, UAPs or UFOs or whatever you want to call them, cannot do that. They can move very fast. They can brighten up. They can zip off almost in a wink of an eye. They can go from Earth space out into outer space, and they can go underwater. Why is that? Because what they're doing is the outer surface of the craft is has an electromagnetic ionization aspect happening, and it allows them to slip through the water. Now, what they haven't yet figured out is how do you go through solid matter? That's where ETs can do. Humans haven't done that yet. Because if they have, then they don't have to build underground bases and structures. All they do is they slip into that transdimensional state, slip into a mountain and park themselves there, and they can still move around inside their spacecraft. But the thing is that you can't leave the spacecraft because you're going to hit solid rock. So that's what they can do. We humans have not yet developed that. That's still beyond our technology. As far as I know, if they can do that, boy, we're into some deep problems. Okay, what other things can we see? And here is some pictures of orbs. Now this is sort of just a collective group of pictures, but I've got them individual. This is a picture of myself and my nephew and his wife. And then there's this orb above my head. And what's interesting was that I was kind of curious to see how much of I could see, because it's all dark in the back. And I think my wife or my daughter took this picture. And as I looked at it, I realized there were several other orbs just above. Now, what's interesting about this is my wife and I were celebrating our 25th anniversary, and my daughter put this whole party together. And it was great. And the ETs showed up. They'll do that. And remember that squiggly flash that was going across the field? Well, there's one right here. And I almost missed that, and I realized, well, wait a minute, that's not a decoration on the fence. That's something else.
Yep. And
so the thing about that is that, you know, this is what's in the background, and you have to pay attention. So I then took this object and I enhanced it. I put the other half on top to make it a complete orb, just to kind of show you what's there, because the others were round. And then I over enhanced the brightness to pick out these objects that are in the photograph. As well, and you see that there are people in the background there. Now, this is a picture of my daughter in red and her friend who's just got married, and there's orbs inside the room, and there's a band playing. Nobody's aware of it. The question I have here, and I can't be absolutely certain, are these UFO orbs or are these departed souls? Because there is a correspondence or a similarity.
Right.
Okay, so this was unique to her event. I wasn't there. Here we got a massive amount of little orbs going on. These are my, this is my in-law, and this is my nephews, and this kid here is this guy's kid, and this was on Long Beach. Now people are going to say, "Oh, it's just the water spray coming from the beach and it's splattering through the air and all the rest of it." Yeah, that's a possibility, but wait a minute, my camera was dry. You know, it wasn't wet. So what was that? Is it dust? Well, that's a lot of dust on a camera. But the thing is, you know, I keep my equipment fairly clean and all the rest of it. So that's not what that is. There's something else going on here. Why are they there? I have no idea. Just showed up. There are other pictures of this where there's nothing there. So, you know, go figure. This is rather interesting, and it doesn't really do it justice. My daughter was celebrating Christmas. She came home from Germany. There's little sparkles around her face, and I don't know if I can make this any larger. I'll try. Let's see if I can do this. You can just barely make them out. And I thought it was a reflection from the Christmas tree lights. But notice that the Christmas tree is behind her, not in front of her. Right? And then, see if I can pull this in. Okay, just bear with me here. And then it kind of moved in front of her face. And
Oh, wow. I see that.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
right around her teeth. And then I looked at Celia and her kids, because this is her family here. And she has a whole bunch of them. Let's see if I can. She has a whole bunch of them down through here and on her face. Now, that is a possibility of lights from the Christmas tree. But these other two, of my daughter, the Christmas tree is behind her. So what's picking up the reflection, if it is a reflection? And I look for those kinds of things because sometimes you can draw lines to it, and the dots correspond with the lights, and then you realize that's just a reflection, right? Here, somebody had an orb in their house. I don't know where this was, but it's floating around, and I would say this is probably taken at night with a security camera, by the looks of it. Yeah, because there's a time and date. I don't know what it is, ATT or something. This one is over the English Bay, and it was taken by my daughter's late boyfriend, who unfortunately passed away. But there's a number of orbs here, 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 and but he was taking a picture of the sunset, and then this is what showed up. And interestingly enough, if you ever go down or had been down to the firework display, what's it called, the Festival of Lights, and you look towards Cyprus and where the lookout is, about nearly halfway, at times UFOs will show up in that area as if they're watching the event. And I had a situation where I felt I needed to look in that direction. And when I did, that's what I saw. And it was an amber light that was about this color of the sunset. And it hung around there for about, good 20 minutes or more. And then all of a sudden, gone. So ETs will show up to fireworks. I've also investigated a case out in Deep Cove area of a woman who went out and they were sharing fireworks, and I forget what time it was or what period of the year, but she saw these lights sort of behind her where the fireworks were, and she looked, and this little kid turned around and looked at it, and he was just amazed by this UFO that was changing color and it was fairly low, and he's pulling on the arm of the father, I believe, and he said, Dad, you gotta look at this, you gotta look at this. And he turns around and he says, never mind about that, look at the fireworks. And this woman is just flabbergasted. And I said, well, did you take any pictures? She said, I never thought to take any. But she says, I could draw out what I saw. And it was pretty remarkable. And I thought it was as remarkable as the fireworks. So there you go. We got UFOs in Vancouver that show up all the time. This is a large orb that was photographed over Montreal. Has color to it. I have seen orbs, apart from that picture that was above my head, within 10 feet of me. And if you remember the big guy on the video clip, Chico, he saw the same orb as I did. We were out in Mission, or not Mission, Stave Lake, because we heard there were reports of UFOs showing up in that area, so we went out to investigate. And as we came out of our meditation, we each saw this grapefruit-sized object that was kind of sort of grayish, kind of disappeared. Just enough time for our minds to register on it and realize it was something anomalous. He saw it, and then I saw it, and then I asked him about it afterwards, and he said, "Yeah, I saw that." So it was hanging around us. This is a very famous picture. This is when the space shuttle was sending out this 40-mile length of steel cable. And I think they were doing an experiment, and somehow it got away from them. As soon as it got away from them, all the UFOs showed up around it. And they were attracted. There was some that are fairly large in size, and this is what they looked like. They always seem to have this little cutout piece or a dark center or something. Here it is on the side, but it has a center to it. Again, these things could be close to near the ground, or they can be out in space. Some of the other things you might come across is these dark shadows that suddenly show up and they cross in front of the stars in the sky, blocking out the stars. And sometimes they have a shape. I made this one triangular, but sometimes there could be some other shape. Very, very huge or very close to where people are on the ground. And then this doesn't do it justice. This is really the Aurora Borealis, but I wanted to show this because there are light grids or energy fields that show up. And I've seen these out in Coquitlam River Park. And you look up, and it may have been the time of year, but we're doing this at summertime, so we don't expect to see northern lights during the summertime.
Right.
But you never know. So, but this was like a snake, and it didn't wiggle so much, but it moved like this, ever so slowly. And as it started to go down the horizon, a second one showed up above it. And it too kind of moved in the same direction. So what was that? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen, and I think it was at the same time, we saw two objects moving from south to north, and they were moving in tandem. Now, the perception I got was, are they UFOs? Yes. Are they extraterrestrial? Not necessarily, because there was something that my gut feeling was telling me these are man-made objects.
Mm.
And they weren't satellites. These were aerospace craft that were moving together. And so sometimes your perception will tell you one thing, your mind will, or gut feeling will tell you something else at the same time. And you have to differentiate between the two. This is why what we're doing requires not only some experience, but a little bit of expertise to become familiar with the things that are known to be able to fly. I have in volume 1, a list of identified flying objects, things that you should be aware of that give off light or fly. And surprisingly, a straw hat can fly and do some strange maneuvers. And I've seen that. And what happens, I was at a medieval event called the Society for Creative Anachronism, and this thing took off from somebody's merchant stand that they were trying to sell this stuff. And two of them took off, and they flew over what we call the battlefield, and they did a pirouette around each other, right? And then one just went disappeared, and the other one, it continued around there, and it flipped over and turned on its side, and it did this and that, and then eventually it kind of went off. And well, they found one, but the other one was lost. But they were like a sombrero type hat made of straw. And the wind caught it in just the perfect manner, and we all stopped what we were doing and looking up at this phenomena that was happening. But it was a natural. We all knew what it was. It just very, very strange. Then you get these orbs or camera flash like bulbs seen in the sky, and this is in a infrared, a green background, and these are common now. We're starting to see a lot of photographs of this. Sometimes they're triangular. You'll notice that these are orb-like or round. So that's very typical. If you're actually making out a defined shape, it's probably man-made. Okay.
Okay.
Again, it takes a little bit of experience to determine that. I know that there are triangular shaped craft. There are even diamond shaped craft. There's any shape you can imagine. The U.S. military, or the covert arm of the U.S. military, has designed. And the reason why they do that is it's based on actual objects that are ET, but they build them to confuse the public. So when you see these, you don't know what you're looking at. And Greer recently did a video for the Cosmic Hoax, and what he showed was these cardboard shapes that are wing-shaped like a boomerang, or they're triangular, or they're square like a box, circular, diamond shape. The typical flying saucer is almost passé now. It's almost as if you don't see a lot of that. And so what I think has happened is there being an evolution amongst the ETs, that when they show up, they used to be in physical form. Now they're not so much, because they want us to be able to differentiate between them and man-made objects. So these objects, though they may appear to be like round globes or orbs, actually have a shape to them, but in this state where they're in a plasmic field, or generating a plasmic excuse me, shape, that's a state they're in, and they can change color. And like a set of pearls within the ETs. Again, so when we're also out, we also want to be aware of what we call high strangeness. And the high strangeness is a sense of a body sensory perception that is warning us something different or unusual is taking place. For instance, a sense of warmth occurring, being in and around people. A fluctuation in temperature from very cool to suddenly warm. Okay, all of these can be explained naturally, but it's unusual if the atmosphere generally is cool and suddenly it warms up. So we want to pay attention to a sense of an increase in the surrounding temperature. Compression of sound, where the sound is compressed as if it's being like white noise, and there's no chirping of insects, nothing, no birds, no rustling of the air through leaves, etc., etc., etc. So, and that is in association with a decrease in wind, stillness, quietness, sometimes associated with warmth. Bodily vibrations from barely detectable to full out shaking. So in other words, you get a perception of pillory erection on your arm. The little hairs will stand up, and or some people start to shake and they don't know why they're shaking, because it's not cold, but they're shaking for some reason. Sounds including buzzing, humming, clicking, or strange otherworldly screeching, sometimes heard by only one of the observers or some of the observers. I've had that where I've heard a clicking noise and I could track it and I knew where it was moving, but I was the only one that heard it. Nobody, and I asked, do you hear that? Do you hear that? And they said, hear what? I said, that clicking noise. No. I said, it's there. Oh, it's just moved. It's over there. You know, and in other words, that's part of the high strangeness. Radar detectors going off for no obvious reason, because there's no electromagnetic fields in the area. There's no cell towers, no power lines, etc., etc., and nobody's using a short wave or anything. So what is that? Why is that sound suddenly showing up on the magnetometer? You get animals sometimes that start to behave unusually. Coyotes howling. They can pretty much howl any old time. But sometimes they'll howl almost unusually at an odd time. You get rustle or movement of animals. Again, nocturnal activity is not unusual for an animal. So you have to kind of understand what may be happening naturally as opposed to those things that are not natural. Unusual smells and fragrances. I will often ask if a lady is wearing any perfume, or did a man use aftershave cologne before he came out? Quite often, no. You can get a smell of violets, roses, carnations, sage, musk, leather. The list goes on and on and on, and they're not associated with the environment. So what are we smelling? Emotional feelings, that of warmth and love, or so strong that people are moved to tears. You know, and I've quoted a few spots where you can, you know, look at some of those experiences. The interesting thing about this is those are all considered high strangeness, and the bodily effects that we have or that we will sense from all of this. Sometimes we get shuffling of sounds on the ground, rustling of branches and leaves, strange breathing or coughing sounds, sometimes even voices that are unusual that nobody is saying or talking, but we're hearing these voices. Sparkling lights moving around within the group. The light can appear as small probes or as vertical forms or shapes of light, often greenish or white. The bare hand, when moved through the light forms of these sparkling lights, will often show. How does I put this? The hand will start to sparkle. In other words, you put your hand through an energy field, and all of a sudden your hand shows sparkly, almost electrical discharging. There are ETs that will actually move into a body of a person and almost seem to possess it, when in fact they're not so much as possessing it, but they're able to sort of you pick up on a sense of consciousness, and you may act out in certain ways. And in a sense, I guess it is a bodily control. Very unusual. I don't think anybody yet has experienced that, but there are groups that have. So that's where they call it, the ETs are able to project into an area, and a person can walk into that projection area or energy field, and there's a distinct feeling of soft, pleasant warmth as one passes through the field. The list goes on. Bilocation. When you're meditating, you can actually bilocate. Remote viewing is what takes place when we're in high meditation, and that's the ability to see at a distance, to perceive another entity or a spacecraft or a civilization. All of those things take place, and it's a form. Meditation is the key to the psychic powers. The more often that you do it, the more your conscious, psychic, spiritual being awakens. And it's that spiritual side that's trying to exert itself in the physical world. And so quite often people will bilocate onto the craft or to a different location. I had that experience where I was on board a craft and watched it descend onto the desert floor below. I've never seen the desert from above, but I recognized it from below because I'd seen it up close from below. But I figured this is the only place that I could see that was desert in this area. And then my consciousness, as it looked out of the spacecraft, could see it descending. And as it descended, my consciousness moved away, and I could see that the craft was on a slight angle. And as my consciousness moved away further, the craft got up and started to move towards me. So what it was the remote remote viewing by location, and the event happened the next day. So I was actually looking into the future. So I had three things happening to me at that time. Turns out I wasn't the only one that had that same experience. There was another person, a woman, who had exactly the same experience. So that is a definite ET message that was coming across to us, and that we had to be at a certain place in order to observe that. And when we went out that night, we thought it was going to happen that night. It turned out it didn't. It happened the following night, and exactly the way we saw. So that's the ability of remote viewing, and all the other little strange things that take place. You know, there's a list of things. If you're buying any of my books, there's 6 volumes, and I'm going to be honest with you, they're bloody expensive. I tried desperately to bring the price down, but it cost me almost an arm and a leg just to get my own book. They don't send out free books, even if you're the author. And I was a little bit annoyed with that, because I figured, well, what am I paying for? You know, well, we'll print it and we'll get it out to distributorship, but we're not sending you a book. You have to buy that. Well, so I actually, to get one of my books, I pay about twice the price that you will pay. And that drove me nuts to think about it. So I will probably have to reconsider who I'm going to get to print out my book, because I believe that as an author, you should at least have one book from them. Anyways, volume 6 has all this information in it. And if you get the volume, which will be cheaper than the first volume because it's a much smaller in size, that is, the first volume had 840 pages. This last volume has about 400, maybe 500 pages. But it's got a lot of information in it, including how to do with CSETI and what to expect, all the rest of this.